busted and made over in the women's section. I took pride in my work as a salesman. Over the 5 years I'd been employed, I'd earned the Salesman of the Month title no fewer than 10 times. I worked in the menswear section at Doyle's, a large department store right in the heart of town. The store liked to boast that no one could match their prices or quality, and to be fair, they usually lived up to that claim. But enough of that. I was in the middle of reorganizing a display of socks, something that never seemed to stay tidy for long, when my department manager, Mr. Avery, approached me. "Mr. Sims," he said, "it's rather quiet here at the moment. Miss Fissler over in ladies' wear is short-staffed. 3 of her assistants are off sick. Could you help out there for the rest of the week?" I didn't exactly have the option to refuse, so I agreed. Still, I couldn't deny feeling a bit uneasy as I made my way to the ladies' department and introduced myself to its formidable manager. "Ah, Mr. Sims," Miss Fissler said briskly. "Thank you for coming over on such short notice. If you could head to the skirts and blouses section, that would be perfect. I'm afraid you'll be working alone, but with your experience I'm sure you'll manage just fine." With that, I found myself behind a small desk surrounded by racks upon racks of skirts and blouses in every imaginable style, color, and price range. I had barely gotten my bearings when my first customer approached, a woman of indeterminate age holding a bright pink blouse and a pale pink skirt. "I'd like to try these on," she said. I directed her to the fitting room and waited outside. After what felt like quite a while, she stepped out and turned to me expectantly. "Well, what do you think?" To be honest, the combination didn't suit her at all. The colors clashed and the skirt was far too short for her. But tact is everything in sales. "Well, madam," I said carefully, "I think something a little more refined might better highlight your natural elegance. Are you shopping for a particular occasion?" "Yes," she replied. "I have a business meeting and want to make the right impression." That gave me an idea. I selected a classic white silk blouse and paired it with a calf-length black skirt, something far more flattering and professional. "Would you care to try these?" I suggested. "I believe they'll give you just the look you're after." She hesitated but eventually agreed. A few minutes later she stepped out again, this time smiling. "You were right," she said. "I look wonderful. I'll take them." That small success set the tone for the rest of the day. To my surprise, I found myself enjoying the work. The ladies' department was bustling and I helped a wide variety of customers. Some with a clear sense of style, others less so. Either way, business was good. At around 4:30 Miss Fissler returned, looking rather flustered. "I've run into a bit of trouble," she admitted. 2 staff members who were meant to assist with tonight's stock check have both fallen ill. I must complete it this evening. Would you be available to handle this section while I oversee the others with Miss Frost? "I've done stock checks before," I replied. "I'd be happy to help." "Thank you, Mr. Sims. I appreciate it." Later, around 5:45, just 15 minutes before closing, the department had grown quiet. I was returning a few skirts left behind in the fitting rooms when I heard someone cough behind me. Turning, I saw a tall woman with broad shoulders and a slightly husky voice. "May I try this skirt on?" she asked. "Of course, madam," I said, guiding her to a fitting room. A few moments later she stepped out wearing the skirt. "What do you think?" she asked. It actually suited her quite well, giving her a slimmer appearance. "It looks very nice," I said honestly. She studied herself in the mirror, then nodded. "I'll take it." After changing back into her clothes, she handed me the skirt. At the counter she paid by credit card. I processed the transaction and asked her to sign the receipt. As I checked the name and signature, I was just about to hand everything back. I was just about to hand back the receipt and card when something caught my eye. The name printed on the card read George Phillips. "I'm sorry, madam," I said hesitantly, "but I can't accept this card. It's in the name of George Phillips." "Is it your husband's?" The customer let out a low, amused laugh. "No, don't be silly," she said. "That's me. I'm George Phillips." For a moment I simply stared, my mouth opening and closing like I'd forgotten how to speak. Normally I could handle any situation with a quick remark or smooth recovery, but this time I was completely at a loss. "Don't look so shocked," he added casually. "I'm a crossdresser. Quite a few of us shop here actually. You've got a great selection. Though now that I think about it, I don't recall seeing you before. Are you new?" By then I'd managed to pull myself together at least a little. "I've been temporarily assigned from the menswear department," I explained. "Well then," he smiled, "when I'm dressed like this I go by Diane." He paused, giving me an appraising look. "You know, you've got a good build, you could probably pull this off yourself. It's more fun than you'd think." I didn't quite know how to respond to that, so I said nothing. "Anyway," Diane continued, "it's been nice chatting, but I'm meeting some friends at the club. Could I have my skirt now?" "Of course," I muttered, handing it over along with the bag. "Thank you," Diane said with a friendly nod before walking away. I stood there for a moment, still unsettled, before returning to my tasks. The store eventually closed and one by one the staff headed home. I stayed behind, continuing the stock check. From across the floor, I could hear Miss Fissler organizing her own section while I worked through my lists. Progress was slow. I wasn't familiar with the layout and I kept losing track of items, forcing myself to double back and recount. Before long, Miss Fissler approached me again. "How are you getting on?" she asked. "Almost finished," I replied. "I've completed my section," she said. "Would you like a hand?" "No thank you. I should be done shortly." "Very well. Don't forget to inform security when you're finished. Good night, Mr. Sims." With that she left and I found myself alone on the quiet shop floor. I returned to my work, but my focus kept slipping. My thoughts drifted back to my earlier encounter. George. Diane. I couldn't quite explain why it lingered in my mind. It hadn't upset me exactly, but something about it kept nagging at me. Eventually, I went downstairs to the staff canteen and bought myself a Coke from the vending machine. The duty security guard was there, a man I vaguely recognized. "Evening," I said. "Mr. Sims, isn't it?" he replied. "Working late." "Yes, stock taking," I said. "Taking longer than I expected." "Well, I won't get in your way. Just let me know when you're finished." "Will do." Drink in hand, I made my way back upstairs. As I passed through the women's department, I walked by a mannequin dressed in a striking red satin gown. "That's quite a nice dress," I thought absent-mindedly. Then I stopped dead in my tracks. What would it feel like to wear something like that? The thought hit me so suddenly that it genuinely startled me. I stood there, frowning, trying to make sense of it. Surely it was just the lingering effect of my earlier conversation playing tricks on my mind. Shaking it off, I continued back toward my section, though now I couldn't quite ignore the uneasy curiosity that had begun to take hold. I returned to my section and tried to focus on the stock take, but something had shifted. No matter how hard I tried to concentrate, my eyes kept drifting back to that mannequin in the red satin dress. Again and again I found myself rechecking the same figures, growing more frustrated with every mistake. It was ridiculous, I couldn't get that dress out of my mind. It was as if a quiet voice inside me kept repeating Diane's words. "Maybe you should try it." I set my pen down and took a long sip of my drink. "What is wrong with me?" I muttered under my breath. I wished I had never met Diane. Ever since that conversation my thoughts felt unsettled. My hands were trembling slightly, my nerves wound tight like a coiled spring. I felt as though if I didn't do something, anything, I might snap. Before I fully realized what I was doing, I was standing in front of the mannequin. Without thinking, I reached out and carefully removed the dress. I paused, glancing around. The floor was empty. The store was closed. No one was there. Slowly, almost mechanically, I undressed until I stood there with the garment in my hands. I started to slip it on, then stopped. If I'm going to do this, it has to be done properly. Leaving the dress draped over a chair, I made my way to the lingerie section. After a brief, hesitant search, I selected a delicate lace bra. Once I put it on, it didn't quite sit right, so I improvised, folding a pair of stockings and placing them inside to create the shape I needed. It took a few attempts, but eventually the result looked convincing enough. Next came a garter belt and a pair of silky stockings. As I carefully pulled them up my legs, I paused, struck by the unfamiliar sensation. The soft fabric clinging smoothly against my skin felt different, almost mesmerizing. I found it difficult to put into words. There was something strangely captivating about it all, about wearing clothes that felt so refined, so deliberate, so unlike anything I'd experienced before. At last, I returned to the dress and slipped it on, fastening the small button at the back. It fit surprisingly well, hugging my frame as though it had been tailored for me. If you were to ask what I was thinking in that moment, I'm not sure I could give a clear answer. It felt distant, dreamlike, as though I were watching someone else go through the motions and I was simply along for the ride. I turned back to the mannequin. Without its clothing, it now looked oddly incomplete. It wore a long blonde wig which I carefully lifted and placed on my own head, adjusting it until it sat naturally. That's when another thought surfaced. Makeup. If I had come this far, why stop now? I walked over to the cosmetics section, taking in the overwhelming array of products. Foundations, powders, blushes, eyeshadows, lipsticks. There was far more than I knew what to do with, but I began experimenting. I slipped on a protective smock over the dress and got to work. It wasn't easy. I made mistakes, plenty of them. More than once I had to wipe everything off and start again. It was clear I had no experience, but slowly, piece by piece, I improved. One problem was the faint stubble on my face, but after a bit of searching I found a small electric razor and managed to tidy it up well enough. With patience I continued, blending foundation, adding a touch of color, carefully applying mascara without blinding myself in the process. The eyeliner took steady hands, but when I finished I found myself surprised at how much it enhanced my eyes. A soft shade of eyeshadow completed the look, followed by a warm pink gloss on my lips. Finally I stepped back. It was done. Or almost. As I prepared to admire the result, I hesitated. Something was missing. I looked down. At this point, everything needed to be just right. I couldn't leave it unfinished. Determined, I made my way toward the shoe department and began trying. The selection in my size was limited, but after trying on several pairs, I eventually found a set of black slingback heels with a modest 2-inch lift. They fit surprisingly well. Walking in them, however, was another matter entirely. Each step felt uncertain at first, but by the time I carefully made my way back to my section, I had begun to adjust. I paused. From head to toe I was transformed. I was wearing clothes I had never once imagined putting on. Silk, lace, satin, all of it resting against my skin in a way that felt both unfamiliar and strangely captivating. I glanced down at myself. The dress fit beautifully. The wig, though slightly heavy, no longer felt foreign. It had become part of me, at least for the moment. Then slowly it hit me. I had actually done it. A faint unease crept in, though I couldn't immediately place its source. And then I understood, it wasn't discomfort at all. It was the realization of something new. I knew now what it felt like to appear as a woman, and to my surprise I couldn't deny that I liked it. Drawn forward, I walked toward the mirror. What I saw there made me stop. The reflection staring back wasn't the person I was used to seeing. It was different, softer. Almost like a version of me that had always been hidden just beneath the surface. If I'd had a sister, I thought she might have looked something like this. Only this version seemed more confident, more alive. More interesting. I couldn't help but compare it to my own life. Routine. Predictable. Safe. I had never been particularly daring, never truly stepped outside the lines. Even my personal life had been uneventful. One brief relationship that ended almost as soon as it began. Work had always come first, filling the spaces where everything else might have been. But now, looking at this reflection, I felt something shift. Maybe things didn't have to stay the same. Maybe I could change. A sudden cough broke the silence behind me. Startled, I nearly lost my balance in the heels as I turned around. There, leaning casually, stood Diane, smiling. "Well, hello," she said warmly. "You look lovely." For a few seconds I couldn't speak. "How did you get in here?" I finally managed, my voice unsteady. She raised an eyebrow. "Don't you recognize me?" I looked closer and then it clicked. "You're the security guard." Diane laughed. "That's right. Though I much prefer this version of myself to the uniform." She took a step closer, studying me with clear approval. "I had a feeling you'd take my suggestion," she added. "And I was right, you pull it off beautifully." What followed was a long, unexpected conversation. As the night stretched on, Diane shared her story, how it had started when she was younger, quietly trying on her mother's clothes whenever she had the chance. Over time it became something more. A private escape, a way of expressing a side of herself she couldn't show during the day. "When I got this job," she explained, "it felt like a dream. Surrounded by all of this, I couldn't resist. Some nights I come up here and just become someone else. Every night is different. Sometimes I dress for a night out, sometimes like I'm heading to an important meeting, and sometimes I just wear something simple depending on how I feel." She smiled knowingly. "Doesn't it ever worry you, getting caught?" I asked. Not really, she replied with a small laugh. I lock everything down. The alarms are set and I check in with the security center every hour. If anything were wrong, I'd know long before anyone else got here. She gestured toward the exit. Come on, she said. Let's grab some coffee. I hesitated, glancing down at myself. I should probably change, I said. These aren't mine, and I still have work to finish. Diane shook her head gently. Stay as you are, she said. You look wonderful. The night's still young, and I'll help you finish the stock afterward. She paused, her expression soft but encouraging. Unless, she added, you're not quite ready to step into this just yet. I hesitated. For a moment I looked down at myself, then back at the mirror. The truth was undeniable, I didn't want to change. I loved how the clothes felt, the way they moved with me, the confidence they seemed to bring out. More than that, I liked who I saw staring back. Not the quiet, predictable Peter Sims, but someone entirely different. Someone more vibrant. Do you think I could go out like this? I asked, half nervous, half curious. Diane smiled. If I can manage it, she said lightly, then you certainly can. And just like that, something shifted. That night marked the beginning of a new chapter in my life. By day I remained Peter Sims, reliable, professional, and firmly rooted in routine. But in the evenings and on weekends I became someone else entirely. Samantha. First it was just the store. Late nights spent with Diane, experimenting with different outfits, trying new looks, learning what suited me and what didn't. But gradually my world expanded. I started going out, visiting clubs, meeting others who, like me, had discovered a different side of themselves. It was at one of those clubs that I met Amanda. She had come along with her brother who shared a similar lifestyle. Her openness and warmth stood out immediately and we found ourselves talking for hours. What started as an easy conversation soon became something deeper. Before long we were inseparable. 2 years later we were married. Now 6 years on, life feels fuller than I ever imagined it could be. I'm still at the store, but things have changed. I now manage both the men's and women's departments, a responsibility I take great pride in. Diane is still there too, of course. In fact, Amanda and I often join her in the evenings along with a small circle of friends. Some are straight, some are gay, some fall somewhere in between, but none of that really matters. Beneath it all, we're simply people comfortable in who we are and enjoying the lives we've built. There's a sense of freedom in that, and a quiet kind of happiness. We've been fortunate, careful too. Between my role at the store and a certain friend in the local police force, we've managed to keep our private lives just that, private. But more than anything, we've lived authentically in our own way. Sometimes during those evenings I find myself thinking back to where it all began, to that quiet night, the empty store, and the unexpected moment that changed everything. And oddly enough, I feel a sense of gratitude. Because if I hadn't been left alone that night, I might never have discovered who I could become.